the Vikings, who had a really sexy record last year, against the Philadelphia Eagles, who were in the Super Bowl. They didn't win it. They had Kirk Cousins, who's the star of that quarterback's reality show. Jalen Hurts, the next big thing. He got paid all that money in the offseason. So, did you watch? Perhaps not. Now, don't worry. We watched for you. It is our good mitzvah of the day. So, DeAndre Swift, a Swiftie, thumped the Purple People Eaters defense. Well, they used to be called that when they were good. 181 total yards, 175 of those on the ground, and a touchdown as Philadelphia held off Minnesota 34-28. The Eagles improved to 2-0 on the young season. The Minnesota Vikings are now 0-2. That's not good. But they did, if you're a gambler, they got a backdoor push, depending on what line you got. You might have won the game. It was 6.5 at one point, but it went off the board at 6. The better story, though, is in the losing locker room. That is where we will begin this rant. And the question, as we discuss, who gets the biggest chunk of the Vikings' juicy Lucy of blame? Not to be confused with the blame pie, not to be confused with the blame burrito. This is the juicy Lucy of blame for the Vikings. So who gets the biggest chunk of that? I've got Sugar Shack, Salvation Army, and 50-50 raffle. And we will tie all of these things together, and we are going to make a lake, because they got extra lakes there back in Minnesota. So, listen, we start at the very top here. We'll take a swim. Kevin O'Connell and Brian Flores, Tweedledee and Tweedledum. Those guys get to go first here. They get a big chunk. Now, I know they didn't play it down. I realize that. However, they are in charge of the basics. The Minnesota defense was manhandled by the Eagles' offensive line. Bunch of lightweights. Minnesota, you got guys playing who are backups, but you're still in the NFL. You're getting paid. Do your job. Philadelphia, if you watch this game, you know it was mostly the Philadelphia Eagles running offensive plays. They ran 20 more offensive plays than the Minnesota Vikings because they could run right, left, and right up the gut. It didn't matter. They did what they wanted on the ground in this game from soup to nuts, and they had possession of the ball for almost 40 minutes of a 60-minute game, 259 yards, and a cherry on top for Philadelphia. They averaged 5.4 yards per rush, and it actually seemed worse than that when you're watching the game. Now, Brian Flores, he needs to do better. He needs to coach better. Hopefully his lawsuit goes better than his job with the Vikings has gone so far because, man, this guy's one of the great defensive minds and all that, and they are doing nothing. Nothing in terms – in this game they didn't. Last week they didn't give up that many points. But, man, Baker Mayfield was able to make some plays there in that game. So then you have Kevin O'Connell, who is the head ball coach, the CEO of the Minnesota football team, which is fundamentally broken. And at this point, Kevin O'Connell is running a Sugar Shack, but they only have one item on the menu: butter fingers. That's it. 2 words: ball security. Not 1, not 2, not 3. How about 4 fumbles? 4 fumbles in this game on Thursday night, and 3 turnovers against the Buccaneers the previous game. So the Vikings, I crunched the numbers on this. I used some Maller math. The Vikings are on pace for 59.5 turnovers this season, which amazingly would not be the NFL record. The NFL record was held and is still held by the 1978 49ers, who in a much shorter season, comparably, they had 63 turnovers. But the Vikings, if they increase their turnover rate just a little bit, they're right there neck and neck. Now, O'Connell better have these guys run gassers. Right? That's what they were doing in the old times. Now, of course, you probably can't do that. But, man, if I was coaching the Vikings, if I was allowed to, it's like, all right, you guys in the back do burpees, and the rest of you have to run to the tree. No, not that tree. You have to run to the tree in Duluth is where you have to run and run back. Now, Kirk Cousins had a really sexy stat line. He had 364 yards passing, 4 touchdowns. He did have a fumble, but that's expected. But it was an uphill situation all day. Philadelphia built up a big lead. The Vikings did not quit. They came back, and if you're a gambler, you're very grateful for that. But the Vikings fall to 0-2, 2 technically one-score losses this season, and they now have the Chargers in their next game. They've got a couple of extra days of rest, and you'd think the Vikings offensively will be fine against the Chargers, but it doesn't matter if they keep turning the ball over. Now, on the other side of this, page 2, the winning side, which is not as good a story, Philadelphia overpowering, running roughshod over Minnesota, as we said. But let's step back, and if you take a look at the wide-angle view here, the Eagles are 2-0. Are you impressed with the Birds? Are you impressed? So I'm giving that question a little bit of stink eye. I am, because it's a tricky little dance is what it is. To me, the Eagles, I watched a lot of the game against the Patriots, and certainly this game I watched all of it. And they haven't proven anything this season, even though they're 2-0. The Eagles have supposedly high standards after getting to the Super Bowl and losing, but Mac Jones tore them up in that New England game for a good chunk of the second and third quarter. And in this game, Kirk Cousins, for the most part, shredded the Philadelphia pass defense. And Philly has been manning a Salvation Army red kettle. And they're getting a lot of donations, a lot of them. The 4 fumbles by the Vikings. The Patriots had 2 turnovers, including a pick 6 in the game last week. So that is 24 points scored as a direct result of the other team just putting a nice gift in that red kettle. And then you have Jalen Hurts, who had one of those misleading stat lines that if you didn't watch the game and you looked at the numbers, you say, wow, that's pretty good. Now, I continue to be blown away that the NFL did not banish the tush push, the rugby play that is still as fearsome as a barracuda. The tush push is unstoppable. Why doesn't everyone do that? So 2 more rushing touchdowns for Jalen Hurts. The passing part was the spotty part. He had 193 passing yards, which looks great in the box score, 8.4 yards per attempt. He had a touchdown, did have an interception, but there were 2 plays that broke the stat sheet apart. There was a 63-yard pass and run for a touchdown to Devontae Smith and a 54-yard dart to Devontae Smith. So on those 2 plays, Jalen Hurts got 117 yards. Now, bear with me. You're not supposed to give math on the radio, but I'm going to give you some more math. So 117 yards on those 2 plays. The other 16 completed passes that Jalen Hurts had, and I wrote this down in my notes, the other 16 completed passes went for a grand total of 76 yards, which means that Jalen Hurts on those other 16 completions averaged 3.4 yards in a cloud of dust, and that was in his other 21 pass attempts. Now, I don't want to be critical, but that sucks. All right, now the last word here. Let's go back to Minnesota. Theme of the night. Fumble! The fumble-rooski. Which they would have been better off running the fumble-rooski because that trick play worked. Their fumbles did not work. Now, there's one fumble that stood out head and shoulders above all of the rest, all of them. And that was the one just before halftime involving Justin Jefferson. He came this close to having a touchdown. Nearly had a touchdown in the second quarter, relatively late. But after an instant replay review, it was determined that the fumble, did you see this? The ball went over the pylon. Oh, my God, no. Say it ain't so, Batman. Yeah. So the ball goes over the pylon. And as a result, Justin Jefferson, the fumble that he had there, the NFL rules mandate that the Eagles are given the football back. And they got it. So instead of the Vikings getting a touchdown and closing right there before halftime, they turn the ball over, and then the Eagles go down and get a field goal before halftime. So that's a pretty big swing in the game, which turned out to be a one-score game. Here's The aforementioned Kevin O'Connell giving his 10 cents on that particular play. Let's go to the audio tape.
We just got to continue to emphasize decision-making, technique, and fundamentals as far as the ball carriers go. But like I said, Justin's just trying to make a play in that moment, and the hardest thing to do is to, get a guy not to reach the ball out when they're that close to scoring a touchdown in a critical moment.
Exactly. And I would like to address this. I'm gonna go on a little rant here. I'm going to get on my soapbox. It's a very large soapbox, okay? And I want to make my pitch right now. The question is, will the NFL ever address the fumble touchback rule? And I've determined not in my life. They should, but they won't. Why? I've got arrogance, pig-headedness, and neurosis as the big three here. And we're not exactly splitting atoms. I've been doing this for a long time. I can't believe how long I've been doing this now. The years just keep piling up. And over every couple of seasons, now it doesn't happen every year, but every few years we get this story. It's an evergreen story. It never changes. People are up in arms. People complain. People scream and shout. Then you've got the rule nerds. Oh, it's a good rule. We like the rule. I hate the nerd. I hate those rule nerds. I cannot stand them. And they'll call it. Maybe we might get one to call up at some point here. Well, Ben, it's really because out of an abundance of caution, you got to do this, And it's so stupid. It's so dumb. Fumbles. It has been proven. We have the data. A fumble in an NFL game it's like a 50-50 raffle, meaning the ball could go either way. But yet, if you fumble out of the end zone, the defense gets the fumble 100% of the time. Explain how that makes sense to me. It doesn't make sense to me, but explain to me how it makes sense, like I'm a kindergartner. You're punishing perseverance. You are not rewarding determination. You are kicking determination in the nuts for the offensive player. You lose possession despite the defense not recovering the ball. They didn't get the ball. The ball went out of bounds. The whistle blew. And not only did they get the ball, they gain 20 yards of field position. So 20% of the field they gain. Now, if you have a problem, you need a solution. So I have a solution I would like to pitch. No one else has this content, okay? I want to run this by you. You are the jury, and I want to see if you will vote yes or no on this. So I thought about it. I've thought about it a lot over the years, but here's my solution to this pylon, end zone, fumble, turnover situation. The Maller solution. Add a college basketball style possession arrow. Possession arrow. Let me explain.
Okay.
Let me explain. All right, if you win the kickoff, that means, just like in basketball, the other team gets the fumble possession arrow. So, here's the way it works. When the offense gets the ball back, the offense gets the ball back out of the fumble, you send it to the original line of scrimmage before the end zone fumble, if they happen to have the possession arrow. Now, if the defense has the possession arrow and they choose to go that way, if it's the defense, you just spot the ball at the 1 yard line, and they start from there. You don't go to the 20-yard line. You start at the 1 yard line because it fumbled out of the end zone. How do you assume it goes back to the 20? So what do you think about that? You want to give me your thoughts